The college football hype machine is out of control. It's not my fault. Well, maybe it is. Just a little bit. Welcome back into this week's edition of How About That Dogs Cast. And friends, tonight, what I want to do is take a look at just how out of control the college football hype machine actually is. And all the things that factor in to make it what it is. And I'm not actually here to bang on it. I'm actually here to glorify it because I'm part of the ecosystem that makes that happen. But what I want to do is just sort of throw out a word of caution to fans of college football everywhere, because this is the time of year that you're going to see these on the shelves, the preseason magazines. Every time you go onto the internet, you're going to follow your favorite team's local sites, and they're going to tell you all about every little detail that's going on with your team. And of course, you want it. You're craving it. We've been away from college football for so long. We want it all. And like I said, I'm part of that. I'm part of that ecosystem. I am part of the reason that expectations get so high every year for individual teams, because just like me, there are podcasters and YouTubers and social media people, digital creators all across this country who follow college football, and they are doing exactly what I'm doing. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you about it, because this is a wonderful time to be a Georgia Bulldogs content creator, because the Dogs are not only a really good football team, they're a step above that. They are in that upper echelon, that tier 1 group of teams that actually have a chance to win the national championship this year. Now, will they? I don't know. I thought they might win it last year. I thought they should have won it last year. I thought they were probably the best team in college football last year, but they didn't actually bring home the trophy. That's something I've talked about on here a lot. There's more to playing football and winning national championships than showing up. But that's all part of our journey as fans. And a huge, wonderful, glorious part of that journey is the hype machine, because it doesn't matter. Whether you're talking about traditional media, social media, the recruiting industry websites that are out there, there's a billion ways that media folk are driving interest in college football. And there's a simple reason for that. Not everyone, believe it or not, that covers the sport of college football are huge college football fans. No, for those people, the answer lies in the bottom line. And they know that we are out here wanting this content. We want to talk about it. We want to discuss it, think about it, debate it. Then there's a group out here like me who is, in fact, a fan. I love the sport. Literally, I am doing everything that I've ever wanted to do in my life around college football. I am so thankful for that opportunity. Whether it's in my day job as a sports journalist, where I get to actually, cover the sports and write and report on them, or whether it's over here doing what I love to do with you guys, because this is a huge part of who I am as a fan. What you see here is Randy as a fan. I've told you 100 times I take off my journalist's hat when I sit here. I am a fan. I can never completely walk out of the shadow of my journalist life, though, and that's the perspective I hope to share with you. So I hope that comes through in our conversations. But the bottom line is I'm a fan when I sit here. Now, can I pick up my hat and put it back on and become a journalist for you? Can I do that, fill that role for you? Absolutely, I can. That's called being a professional. But I make no bones about it, and I don't intend to hide the fact that when I sit down behind this mic every Wednesday, or to create another piece of content, any video, any appearance on another podcast, anything like that, I'm showing up as a Georgia Bulldogs fan. Because it's just part of who I am. It's in my DNA. I was raised up to be a Bulldog. I went to school at the University of Georgia. I graduated from there. So much of my life I have today, I owe to the University of Georgia. So when you think about it that way, I'm not doing anything that anybody else who has a heart full of gratitude, who's thankful for where they are in life, wouldn't be doing. Yes, I want to drive interest in my university. I want to drive interest in my football program, and I want to do the best job I can do to fairly represent said university and football program. And I hope that's why you're here, because we have a like-minded view of the finest institution in the land. But with all of that said, the hype machine itself for college football as a whole is cranked up to 11. Like they tore the knob off. This is the time of year when we are downhill toward the greatest time of year, and that is college football season. So who does that affect when you have the series of circles that overlap between the teams that can actually go out and win the national championship this year and every other college football team whose fans have every right to be just as excited for the coming of college football season as we do? But there is a group there where that Venn diagram comes together of championship quality teams and teams that are being talked about a lot. Who are those teams? You know them. Don't act like you don't. Of course, the names that are going to pop up on everybody's list are Ohio State, the University of Georgia, Oregon, Michigan, because they won the title last year. Of course, they're going to draw some interest. Alabama is in that conversation. Texas will elbow their way into any conversation if they're given half a chance, because they don't want to be left out of this discussion, nor should they be. Notre Dame, absolutely one of those teams this year. Honorable mention, we can stretch it on out and talk about Florida State or Tennessee or Ole Miss or Penn State even. Is this the year that they're going to break through everything that we expect them to be, which is maybe the third best team in their conference, because that's where they've been forever? If you're a Penn State fan, you've got people telling you right now, this is the year. Doesn't matter, as long as there's a sliver of hope there, this is the time of year you can talk about that legitimately. And that is how the hype machine gets cranked up the way it is. So what does that all mean? Like I said, there is a group of teams that are going to be talked about along with everyone else, but the teams that we just ran through, those sounds are going to be amplified. Because if there's news coming out of Ohio State or out of the University of Georgia, that is news that affects college football as a whole. Whereas if TCU has some sort of event go down that nobody's expecting, yes, it's going to get mentioned, but it's not going to shake the landscape the way it is, say, if Ohio State or Michigan or Oregon has some sort of news, like a bolt out of the blue that no one's expecting, break. So we're going to look at it just a little bit more, and we're going to walk our way through it because, like I said, along with everyone, for goodness sake, last week, I spent an entire podcast talking to you about the fact that the national championship game is back in Atlanta this year. I went through the college football playoff schedule, broke down the games, how seeding works, all of that sort of thing. And even though it's not directly tied to my school, in Georgia's case, obviously they were in the discussion, but I wasn't talking about Georgia. I was talking about college football. And there is no better marketing machine right now in college football than ESPN, ABC, and Disney. They have positioned themselves to control the discussion. And that discussion was had right here. So even inadvertently, in a roundabout way, I'm cranking that hype machine just as much as everybody else, because then on top of it, I'm going to come to you and talk about them dogs. Once the hype train gets rolling around any of these teams, it's darn near impossible to derail it. You almost cannot slow that train down once it gets downhill. And that's okay. Again, that's what we as college football fans want. But when we're talking about this group of teams that you see on the screen here, Michigan, Texas, Alabama, Oregon, Notre Dame, they won't stay out of the conversation because love them or hate them, you're talking about them. And this time of the year, that's a good thing to do. I can bang on Notre Dame thinking they should be in a conference somewhere. I can say they got exactly what they deserved by not being allowed to have a bye in the new college football playoff. But then you're going to have a Notre Dame fan on his podcast or who covers Notre Dame as a beat writer step right up and explain to you that they will gladly hand over that opportunity to have a bye because they treasure their independence. And they're going to make that argument for you. And before you know it, you two are sitting at the bar, shouting down at one another, having a wonderful, boisterous, fantastic college football conversation, which just amplifies all of this that I'm talking about tonight. All this hype, all this anticipation. It really is like December, like leading up to Christmas for most of us. Everything is possible. To steal a line from baseball, hope springs eternal. Well, here we all fall for it every year. We fall into that trap. And that's why I put it in the title this year. The discerning college football fans among us, the smart ones. We can have fun with all of this because we can sit back and go, yeah, I know, it's great. But everybody's saying a whole lot of stuff right now. And I'm here for it. I want to talk about it. But I know that everything is not going to come up roses for every team across the country this year. That's why you have to stay rooted in your college football fandom. You have to be like, I get it. I'm going to be a Dogs fan, whether they win the national championship this year or not. I'm rooted in the fact that college football happens. Injuries happen. Stuff goes down. The ball bounces funny. And when it does, I'm still going to be cheering for the Dogs. I'm not going to go on social media and blast the players. I'm not going to call for coaches to be fired. I'm not going to do any of that because the minute you do that, you reveal yourself as one of those true fanatics who choose to remain anonymous, who are not going to show up here every week and have a conversation with you the way I will. That's why you guys want to be in this chat. That's why you're here. That's why you watch this channel. I'm willing to bet it's because you get it. You're one of those smart college football fans who would never give yourself over wholly to the hype that we're seeing at this time of year. Again, the hype is fantastic. I am here for it. I mean, before you know it, we are going to be back in Atlanta for that national championship game. Our Dogs may be there. Two of these teams you see on the screen right now might be there. Just with that statement alone, I could hear the FSU people or the Tennessee people or the Ole Miss people piping up and saying, that's right, we're going to shock the world. And that's what makes college football great. That's why we love it. That's why the market for content this time of year is what it is. I saw a tweet today on Twitter and I interacted with it, and the good folks on the other end shot me back a message, and it was all good because they know exactly what I'm saying is true. And that is, if you are a college football content creator today, life is good. You have no shortage of things to talk about, especially if you are a Georgia Bulldogs content creator right now. It's not what was me over here. You're never going to hear me tell you, man, I just don't know what to talk to you people about. No, I can't get to all the stuff. Remember, I'm a one-man band. I cannot possibly get to it all. And again, before you know it, we're going to be right here. The lights will be bright in the national championship game. We're going to be talking about that, whether the Dogs are in it or not, but hopefully we're going to be there. And it all starts for real next month. when the SEC kicks off this college football season with their annual get-together of journalists and coaches where we do nothing but wallow and revel in everything SEC football for a solid 4 or 5 days. It's a glorious trip. It is wonderful. I absolutely love it. It literally is a playground for me. And like I said, that's how I know that I am just as guilty as everybody else in cranking this hype machine, because promise you, friends, I promise you, I'm doing the best I can do right now. But when I get there and I have nothing else to do except focus on SEC football and the Georgia Bulldogs, there will be content coming out of my ears. It's going to be on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Everywhere that I am, there's going to be content. And if we're lucky, there's going to be even more on top of all of that. That's all I can say about that for now. But the bottom line is cranking out the content. And I'm not going to be the only one. There are going to be people from every outlet, big, small, independent, corporate owned. And they're going to be doing the same thing. It literally is going to be a tsunami and then a flood that never seems to end for the week of SEC Media Days. It will be glorious. If I weren't going to be in Dallas, I would be watching it on SEC Network. Every word. Meanwhile, I would have 2 or 3 windows open, doing all of my internet sleuthing and talking to all the people that I know and following all of the people that I trust. Can't wait to read the next thing that they post. Because when you're a fanatic the way I am, you use all of those things to build, the kaleidoscope, the tapestry of the upcoming college football season. Is any of it 100% accurate all the time? No. That's okay. That's where perspective comes in. I can take this guy's perspective, this girl's perspective, put them together, tie it in with what I know, and now I think I have a better understanding of what this season's going to be. And when people consume content in that way, and then they come back to me and say, man, I love what you're doing. It's great. Do you know how over the moon that makes me? That puts me in a place, a headspace that you just can't get any other way. It's like a drug. It's addictive. I'm sure you've seen the meme out there, right? It's like, well, at least it's not drugs. I may have just bought 57 new books without any more shelf space, but at least it's not drugs. That's how I feel about this. At least it's not drugs. I'm out here talking about college football and recruiting and just all these things. There are worse things to be addicted to. You know what I mean? I'm sure that you do. It's why you're here. I mean, just look. SEC Media is going to kick it off, but in the lead up to SEC Media Days, and especially if you're a Georgia Bulldog, just look at what we've been doing this week in recruiting. Hat tip to those out there who follow the recruiting more closely than I do, who do a good job of letting us know who may be about to commit or who's not going to commit or who committed and nobody knew that was coming or whatever it is. The beat writers. I happen to be partial to the fellas over at UGAsports.com, but there are a lot of good people out there doing a lot of good work, trying to bring you all the insight that they can bring you, the perspective, the quotes that these young men who are making life-changing decisions might choose to share about our beloved university. And it's been a good week for the Dogs. There's been a lot of stuff happening on that front. And man, I'm just telling you, we're not done with that. That's going to carry us right up to SEC Media Days and beyond, most likely. You see, everything can be content. And that's why when you're someone like me, it is so enticing to look at something and think, how can I take this information and present it to the people who trust my platforms, the voice of my platforms? How can I be true to that trust and deliver them some cool and original content today? That's what I say every day when I wake up. Truth. And if anybody else is out there doing a good job, that's what they're doing too. They're always trying to figure out one more way to get it done. Something a little different. That's what it's about. It's a chase. It's a pursuit. The players, the coaches, the team are pursuing another national championship. They are pursuing excellence in their craft, not perfection. Remember, I've said it 100 times on here, and I will repeat it as long as I have a microphone and a camera. Perfection and excellence are not the same. And once you understand the difference between the two, that pursuit of excellence becomes a weightless journey. You just can't stand to not be working towards your very best. So whether you're a content creator like I am, who is blessed to talk about a university as great as mine, or you are the people, in fact, out there in the arena doing the thing, you are pursuing that excellence at every turn. And that just drives everything forward because you don't get tired. Gino Auriemma, the great head coach of the women's basketball team at the University of Connecticut, once told his players, greatness, the great ones, they don't get tired. You don't get tired. It's not a thing. You wouldn't be here if we had to coach you through getting tired. And what he meant was those people motivate themselves. Coach Auriemma and his staff were there to help them become the best players they could be through scheme and so on. He didn't have to worry about those guys, ladies, pursuing greatness, pursuing excellence through the processes that Gino and his staff put in place. It doesn't just apply to this, it applies to everything. That's just the way I see it. That's the way I view it. So yeah, the college football hype machine is out of control, but I love being a part of it. And as a college football fan, I love that it's out of control because I get what I want. I hope you feel the same way. It makes all of this so much more fun. So that's enough pontificating about what's happening. Let's focus in a little bit more on that Venn diagram, those teams that I mentioned earlier who might actually have a chance to win the thing and exactly why that could happen. There's a thing out there. It posted this week. The people over at CBS posted something called the blue chip ratio for 2024. And essentially what that is a metric that's used in the preseason here when we're talking about all these unknowns and what could be to forecast what's going to happen in the upcoming season. And the blue chip ratio is a pretty good indicator because over the last few years, as you can see here, this metric has performed pretty well. I mean, in 2023, Michigan won the title with a 54% blue chip ratio. Now, what does the blue chip ratio mean? That means that on your roster over a period of 4 years, a rolling period of 4 years, that is the percentage of players on your roster that were, according to the consensus recruiting rankings, 4 or 5-star players that signed with your team, as opposed to 2 and 3-star players that may have signed with your team. So in other words, if you have 50% or more of your current roster that is a 4 or a 5-star player, then that would be your blue chip ratio. 54% of Michigan's roster last season was a 4 or 5-star recruit, according to the consensus of the recruiting industry. So now that we're clear on that, in 23, Michigan won the national title at 54%. There's never been a team that has won it less than 50%. So Georgia in 22, dominant with a 77 blue chip ratio, 77% blue chip ratio. In 21, that number was 80% for the Dogs. 80%. And oh, by the way, they beat the team that had the number 1 blue chip ratio that year, Alabama, in the title game. And the 4 teams that were in the college football playoff, They were all blue chip ratio teams. In 2020, Alabama won it with a blue chip ratio of 83%. All 4 college football playoff teams were blue chip ratio squads. 2020, Alabama. 2019, LSU won it with 64% BCR. 18, Clemson won it with a 68% BCR. 17, Alabama won it all with an 80% BCR. We could go on down the list, but the bottom line is this metric matters. It matters. You have to have quality football players if you're going to win. Of course you do. But this is a great metric to help you track it over a 15-year period. And in the last 10 years, that tracking mechanism of recruiting, ranking industry numbers have gotten even better. So inside the last 10 years, you have a pretty good idea of who actually have a chance to win the national championship in any given year based on their blue chip ratio, their roster makeup. So for this year, the list breaks down like this. And you shouldn't be surprised, especially with NIL playing a role. But Ohio State has a 90% blue chip ratio on their roster heading into this season. So you might think, hands down, that's who's going to win the national championship. You would be wrong. I mean, you might be right, but there's no guarantee that that's what's going to happen. What it does guarantee, essentially, especially in this 12-team playoff, is that they are going to be in the playoff because they have players that are better than most everybody else. Alabama, some may be surprised, I'm not, checks in at number 2 with an 88% blue chip ratio. Right on the heels of Ohio State. And then, of course, our Dogs come in at 3 with an 80% blue chip ratio. Now, that's a pretty good drop, a full 10 points, a full 8 points behind the top 2. But again, there are other things in play here. A new coach is in Alabama. You have a lot of consistency at the University of Georgia. Ohio State has felt the sting of losing to Michigan for 3 straight years. Is it 3? Regardless, Michigan just won the national championship last year. It doesn't matter beyond anything else. Ohio State can't live with that. So I guarantee you they were talented last year. They just got beat. That's what happens in football. Look at the number 4 team here. Texas A&M at 79%. The BCR ranking alone would have you thinking that they absolutely are going to be in the playoff and have a chance to win the title this year. But what have we seen from Texas A&M the last few years on the field? Yeah, I know. Jimbo Fisher was there. Well, you would think an experienced head coach would have made them even better. That's why they were the trendy preseason pick each of the last 2 or 3 years, to do big things, to break through. Didn't happen. A lot of those players that were on that team originally that were 4- and 5-star players have since transferred out. Does it matter? No, they're still right there, 79%. They are still very talented. Like Alabama, they also have a new head coach. A new head coach who understands development, who runs a tighter ship than old Jimbo ran. Could that be the key that propels Texas A&M to step up and bite folks that, maybe people thinks they can't bite right now? I might have more to say on that later. Stick around. Watch this space. And then Oregon at number 5, 76%. How many times have you heard people say the Big Ten and the reshuffling and all of that? Great, but now they've got real competition in the league. They've got SEC. They've got USC coming in. They've got Oregon coming in. And immediately Oregon has been penciled in by many people to be the favorite or one of the favorites to win the Big Ten Conference this year. as well they should. Oregon is a talented football team with a good coaching staff. So remember when I said, could Penn State break through and somehow not this year be the number 3 team in the Big Ten the way they've been for the last few? I don't know. That question looks different when you remember the fact that Oregon and USC are joining the league. Maybe they go backward. Could they still make the 12-team playoff? The hype's going to tell you they can. We won't know what the football tells us until we see it. But that hype machine is cranking, nevertheless. But there's more to this than just high school recruiting. There's the transfer list. So when you look at the transfers, you factor that in. What's the BCR for these schools? Well, the top doesn't change. Not much anyway. Look, Ohio State, 86%. Alabama, 82%. Georgia, 77%. Consistently right there. Why? Because Georgia may have lost 1 or 2 players here or there, but they plug in other top-tier players right there. So Georgia doesn't move a whole lot. That speaks to how Georgia uses the portal directly. That is a good example. They are not dependent on the transfer portal to make them a talented football team. They are a development program built on top-level high school recruiting. And they earned their BCR number through the high school ratings, not through the transfer ratings. But look, Oregon is at number 4 at 71%. Let's go back. Let's look at the BCR list for this year. Who follows Oregon on this list? Coming in at number 6, Oklahoma. You're like, whoa, who's below them? Texas. Yet all you hear in this offseason hype machine is just how great Texas is going to be, how they're going to be the new daddy in the Southeastern Conference. They're so talented and they've got so much money. The numbers tell a different story. It tells us that on the field, Oklahoma is just as or more talented than Texas should be. We look back to last season and what happened? On the field, Oregon beats Texas. You can see how all this stuff ties together, how it really matters, and it helps us discern here in talking season exactly who it is that really has an opportunity to compete. So when you look at these schools that I mentioned earlier, they're all in the conversation, and people like me across this country are telling you that this is the year that these teams could do a thing. That's what I'm doing right now. Some of them have a much better argument than others when you dig just a little bit deeper. And then you have to factor in stuff like the schedule these teams play. I'm going to say it again. It's not even up for debate. Georgia has one of the toughest schedules in the country. But right here is where you've heard me tell you that among the teams that have a chance to win the national championship this year, Georgia's schedule is the toughest. But the flip side of that is, if the BCR is accurate, if the recruiting machine, the structure, the standard, all that stuff that we believe to be true about Georgia is true, then they still are favored to win every one of these games. By how much? Up for debate. But 9 out of the 12, I can, without even thinking about it, 9 out of the 12, Georgia's probably going to be a double-digit favorite. And all that comes back to how good we all think they are, based on things like the blue chip ratio. But you still got to go play the games. We all know this. But that doesn't stop the hype machine from cranking louder and louder and louder every season. And the Georgia people inside the building, at the same time, they both know it and they don't care. Because the mission is the same. The mission is to go out and pursue excellence every day. The rest will take care of itself. So much so because they know that that process works for them. They've seen it in the past. It has led to conference championships. It has led to back-to-back national championships, and it has put them in a position to potentially win their third national championship in the last 4 seasons. But you might say, well, Randy, that's all fine and good, but they didn't do it last year. No, they didn't. And immediately people might pivot and turn to, well, let me tell you who's going to win the national championship. It's going to be Ohio State. Look at that roster. They literally, and I'm not saying this in a derogatory manner, have gone out and bought the very best college football team they can buy. Again, I'm not slamming them. That is the system we are in, and they have made their choice. But that's where it brings us back to the talk of expectation. What has to happen in Columbus, Ohio, in Athens, Georgia, for the less than 100% invested fan to have a good college football season this year? It's national championship or bust, baby. There is no discussion. You have to be in Atlanta in late January when the confetti is coming down, and it has to be the color of your team. If it's not, then you did not live up to expectations. And that is the danger of this hype machine, because there is no bringing it back. That dog is out the gate. So you better get it done. But we, me, you, all of us that follow college football the way we do are responsible for driving this hype to such levels. And that's why I said the hype is there regardless of whether or not any of us add our voice to the chorus. But the smart fan knows that everything that's being said in this echo chamber of hype in the preseason cannot be true. So you could never give yourself over to it 100%. The best we can do is hope, as Georgia fans, that a team like Ohio State, the number 1 rated blue chip ratio team heading into 2024, either preseason number 1 or number 2 on everybody's ballot heading into the year. All that we can hope is, as another team that's in that conversation, the Dogs can do everything that they can do to put themselves, hopefully for the 4th time, in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz late January in the college football national championship game. And if we're truly fortunate as college football fans, there will be a damn good team on the other side, like Ohio State. And maybe we can get a game as timeless as the last time those two teams got together. The hype machine is out of control, but we wouldn't want it any other way. I know that I wouldn't want it any other way, because that is just part of what makes college football the best sport on planet Earth. Take it from somebody who's covered them all. I respect those other sports. We just wrapped up NHL's pursuit of the Stanley Cup. Tremendous trophy, tremendous honor to be a champion in that league. College football is better. The college football hype machine is out of control, but it's not all bad, especially when you are a digital creator like I am talking about Georgia Bulldogs football. It is because of the passion of fans like me and like you that college football is, in fact, the greatest sport on the planet. So yes, the hype is out of control, but the discerning college football fan knows that you can't take all of that on face value this time of year, because you know we still have to go play the games. But it doesn't mean that we can't wet our whistle, get fired up, and just keep going upward in our anticipation for this upcoming college football season, because that's why we're here. It's fun and we're having a good time. And I would never, ever tell somebody that they shouldn't do that. So support your school, support those dogs, I appreciate your support for this channel. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of your friends, take care of your families. And go dogs!
Told them, how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told them.